All right. Hey, we are live and we are recording. I hit both buttons. Yay. Guys, today I want to talk about a surprising way that you can experience more peace. And I'm putting my phone on D&D because this is a really important conversation. When I was thinking about this today while I was driving into the office, what really brings peace? And this tip that I'm going to give you is probably not one you've heard of before. Not one that many people talk about, that's for sure. We often hear about meditation, breathing techniques, um, ways of managing stress, nurturing ourselves as ways to feel more peaceful as a business owner. And those all are great. But to me, there is this one action that not just creates more peace, it also creates more confidence. It's a double whammy. And it is about embracing difficult conversations. One of the things that I noticed, and luckily for all of us, especially for you, this last week, and I mean like from Thursday to today, minus the weekend, these last like 4 days have been a test, I feel like, kind of putting me in a position to practice what I preach. And that's really what I was mulling over when I was driving in today, because I was like, what did I do that got me to this place of feeling triumphant, feeling good about where I'm at? And it was embracing difficult conversations. Here's what happens as a business owner. A lot of times we are faced with challenges, and it's almost as if we are trying to constantly fix things and perfect processes or solve problems, basically, problem solving, because we don't want the pain and discomfort of dealing with it. Rightly so, it is uncomfortable. And what's worse is, as a business owner, it's easy to take all of that personally because it's our business, our name essentially on the building. And these particular situations I was being faced with, I was aware of the fact that I dealt with the same thing when I worked in the automotive industry, but my stress level was so different. And I was wondering about that. And that's actually kind of what got me down this path, because I was realizing, okay, when it was somebody else's pocketbook on the line, somebody else's reputation on the line, as in my employer, I handled things like a champ. I simply just addressed the situation. I was fearless. I was unruffled. My feathers were not ruffled when somebody made threats or made their complaints. And I was in the customer relations department. It was what I dealt with all the time, right? So it wasn't like random and out of the blue. It was my job. But I didn't ever feel like I took it personally. And I think that's one of the biggest things that happens with a business is when something fails in our business, it's easy to take it personal, and it's easy to think, oh, every time this happens, it's smearing my name, it's smearing my business. I don't want this to happen again. So we want to avoid it. And we go about fixing it however we go about fixing it. Not to say that meditation and breathing techniques and processes and strategy aren't helpful, because they absolutely are. And I 100% think that is definitely something. If something isn't going well, and you need to rectify your processes, do it. Like, that's 100%. But there is one significant piece to this that I see people struggle with the most, and that's evading the desire to evade difficult conversations. What's interesting is when we feel offended, it usually comes down to where we feel wronged or we feel defensive. I'm right, you're wrong, whatever. What was interesting when I was working in the automotive industry is it wasn't about right or wrong. It was about the perception the customer had and how can I bridge this gap so that we can have a compromise. That was my job. Now, there's an important book I would love for you to read. If you struggle with having this, or you ever find yourself stressing out about having conversations, whether it be with team, whether it be with a client, whether it be with a vendor or whatever, it doesn't matter. This is a great book to read. And by the way, it also applies to family. There's sometimes we need to be having crucial conversations with our family that we're avoiding. Okay. And the book is called Crucial Conversations, by the way. It's a great book. And I'm going to give you kind of the underlining theme. I still recommend reading it because I'm not going to cover the whole thing here, but the underlining theme is to find common ground. And that's what I was really realizing today is that we feel disturbed when we feel wronged, or we feel like we guilty. Guilt is another one where we could feel like, yeah, we were wrong and I feel bad and I don't know what to do about it. And I'm scared of the consequences. I'm scared of what I'm going to face. Okay. But looking back into the automotive industry, there were situations where we were wrong and I would do what I could to make it right. There were other situations that we were not wrong, but I still had to do something to try to make it right for the customer to the best of my ability. That's the point. There was the common ground, trying to find a way to make it right. That was it. We both wanted to work this out. Maybe we weren't going to both walk away feeling super awesome about it, but who does when you're in negotiation, right? When you're in negotiation, usually both sides are conceding something. And that's kind of what customer relations is about. It's a negotiation to where you may not feel super excited about it, but you could feel better than you did before. And same is true when we're dealing with conflict or challenging situations in our business. Facing those conversations, this is why it brings two things. It brings peace because the situation's being dealt with. A lot of unrest, mental, physical, etc., comes from worry. Worry happens when we are not dealing with something, when we're letting it fester. Or worse, when we're having to wait on somebody else to get back to us or to do whatever. So whenever we can embrace the challenge, here's how we go about doing it. And these are my steps and my tips for you today. Number one, I do pray. I don't go into any difficult situation without praying first. I turn it over to God. I ask him to bless the situation so that every party can feel satisfied. And I trust that he's going to give me the words I need to say in that moment. Because, guys, that can be a very scary feeling when you're having a conversation and you're nervous. Because when you're nervous, what happens? You might say things that don't come out the exact way you mean it, or could sound worse than maybe what you meant it. There's just a lot of bad things that can come when we aren't centered, right? When we're talking out of our out when we're speaking from not from within. We're just speaking because we feel defensive or we feel nervous or we're jittery or whatever. Usually we end up blabbering or saying something that we don't need to be saying. But when we're centered and we can have that confidence that no matter what I say, it's being blessed. And yes, even if I screw up, it's somehow going to work out. That's pretty much the mindset I go into it with, but I definitely take that moment to pause and to reflect. The second thing is I look for that common ground and I do my best to get objective. So let me tell you, there was a situation this week where somebody had emailed, and this was in one of my businesses. They had emailed and it was a very intense email. They had a family member who was an attorney. So the language was very attorney-ish, I guess you could say, legal sounding. And that was intimidating. I mean, initially when I read it, I was in fear and stress just right up. Obviously, that's where I used my grounding techniques and my breathing and that kind of stuff. But when it came to addressing the situation, I employed these strategies. It was getting clear on what is the common ground. I told myself, I'm going to reread this with an objective perspective without fear. I just want to look at it like, what am I seeing in front of me? And that's hard. That is, listen, business ownership is a mind game, 100%. Like strategy will get you so far, but if you don't have the mindset and the emotional grit to deal with things, you will not stay in business. I guarantee you. Or you're going to build a business to where you are a servant to everybody else and it's a glorified job. Really running a business means you have to think differently, and therefore it's a mind game. So this is really the cartwheels that we do. We have to set aside our emotion. We have to look for that common ground. We have to look at things pragmatically. And then we have to act. So step 3 is to take action. If that's a phone conversation, be clear on the outcome you're aiming for. Be clear on what you want to say. Take the action that you need to take with that centered approach as much as possible. I had another situation that wasn't in business, it was in a different capacity. And the same thing was true. I had things that were stressing me out because they had been left unsaid. And it just hit me. I have to address this. I have to speak it. I have to talk this out. I have to say my piece. Okay. But I also want to be able to do it in a diplomatic and graceful fashion to the best of my ability. Okay. That's all you can ask of yourself. So I'm telling you, there is a level of grace you have to give yourself when you're dealing with these situations because you are human and you're going to do the best you can. But it does help to have that safety net of trust in God if you do, or universe, whatever words resonate with you. It is also important to take that moment to center yourself, to breathe, to get clear. But last but not least, don't delay. Take action. When you do, the resolution is going to be quicker. The more delay you have, the bigger the problem gets. And when you take that action and you have a result, sometimes just taking the action is enough and you'll feel confident. It is a confidence booster. What I guess I'm really trying to say, if I were to summarize this, is this. It's easy as a business owner to want to try to create a perfect world where it's almost like when you go bowling and you have bumpers. Like you want your processes, you want your team, you want your everything to reflect this easygoing, comfortable business that creates profit and peace and harmony for everybody, right? Your customers, in a perfect world, your customers are always happy, your team is always happy, and you're always happy. The reality is that is not realistic. In fact, it's very unrealistic. And if we're trying to, if we're setting ourselves up to believe that that's possible, then we're setting ourselves up for false expectations, which is going to lead to frustration and possibly even you quitting your business rather. By embracing and accepting the challenges that are going to happen, but you have a toolbox of resources to use in those moments, you will be successful. Cody Sanchez, I love Cody Sanchez. She says it herself, and I know a lot of other business owners have. A lot of times, it's really about the last man standing in your business. You have to have that grit and determination to face those challenges. And I would add to that to say it's also about setting yourself up for the expectation that challenges are gonna be a part of your business. It is unrealistic to think you will never have a challenge. It is unrealistic to think that everything will always be smooth sailing. So have realistic expectations, have a toolbox for handling those challenges, and then, my friends, you will cultivate more peace because when these things come up, you're gonna realize, I've dealt with this before. I can do this again. Your threshold for your tolerance of uncomfortable situations will get higher. In other words, you'll be able to handle more difficult situations because you'll have the experience to back it up. That's my advice. So if you're just getting started and you have a notion that it's going to be easy peasy all the time, probably want to have a real conversation with yourself. Start with that crucial conversation, then read the book, and then really write out your plan for when difficult situations are going to come up and what you can do about it. All right. I hope this was helpful for you. Please like and subscribe, share it with a business owner if you know any that would resonate with this. I